It's the Inside Scoop Virginia, all the news Virginians want to know. Now here's the host of Inside Scoop Virginia, George Burke.
Welcome to tonight's show. My name is George Burke. I have an interesting show tonight. The two players I have on the show are probably more familiar to folks in Prince William County than they are in Fairfax and some of the other Northern Virginia jurisdictions. To the far right is Greg Latish, who is the guy who runs the Black Velvet Bruce Lee blog that covers Prince William County issues. It's been heavily involved in the immigration issue that's been down there. Greg is an IT consultant. He's also president of Help Save Manassas, which is involved in these immigration issues. Also with me tonight is Annabelle Park, who's a filmmaker who, with one of her colleagues, has in fact been documenting a lot of the immigration issue on video. She's a new media activist. Both these folks have a lot of experience in this new media, blogs, etc. And she has been co-directing this 9500 Liberty project. To both of you, welcome. Hopefully we're going to have some interesting discussion tonight. Let me start it right out by asking you first, Bruce, to describe your blog, describe Help Save Manassas in about a minute, but tell us what your goal is, what you've done, what you hope to do.
Well, I think the genesis for Black Velvet Bruce Lee has been to provide an alternative source for political information for local residents in Prince William County, Manassas, and Manassas Park, that they're not getting from the local media. Our local media is very weak in regards to reporting on what's happening in local government, what's candidates for office are talking about, and what's happening in the community. So Black Velvet Bruce Lee has sort of grown into an alternative source for local political information. And based on some of the issues that were of great concern, over the past few years, it's sort of focused on the immigration issue and allowed us as sort of like a springboard to start talking about a citizen activist organization called Help Save Manassas that's working on this issue at the local level to help citizens get involved with their local government and make sure that their voice is heard.
And one of the things I want to get into in this show is specifically how the use of new media, along with some other tools, but how new media was used to develop a grassroots movement. We had actually reached out to Lowell Feld of Raising Cain to appear on the show tonight. He declined. I don't know if he's more scared of you or me.
Me. He's scared of me.
We'll be discussing that some more, Greg. Annabelle, again, same thing. You're involved in this same issue from a totally different angle. You've produced a number of documentaries that if anybody is on the internet, they've seen them. I guess they've been shown some other places as well. Tell us a little bit about more about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, basically, Eric Byler, my partner, and I are very interested in exploring YouTube and new media and the internet to see how we can better participate in the democratic process. And I think one of the things that we're very interested in is the power of YouTube to communicate, as Greg is doing, an alternative information source. So we are able to kind of, in some ways, compete with mainstream media to get information out. And I'm an activist to the degree that I'm very interested in the democratic process. And I would like for all of us, all citizens, to be activists and be fully engaged in the democratic process. And so about 9500 Liberty, we've been documenting the immigration resolution in Prince William County. And Greg, in fact, is one of our stars. So.
It's please bear with me if I call you Bruce from time to time with the Bruce Lee moniker on the blog. It isn't purposeful. Greg, this issue arose. Obviously, there were the situation was ripe for some kind of change in Prince William County. It's not an issue that has not affected other counties as well, although some places where I live, I've lived in the Mason District of Fairfax County for 30 years. It's always been very diverse, and it's what to be expected. National Geographic called the high school that's in Mason District, the one closest to my home, where my kids went, the most diverse high school in the nation. It was a cover story on National Geo. Did you create the blog at the same time you started pushing the immigration issues, or was the blog already in place at that point?
The blog was definitely already in place. The genesis of the blog was the 2005 race to replace Harry Parrish after he had passed away in the 50th district. And a number of candidates had stepped up to seek the Republican nomination. The guy that originally started the blog, because I didn't start this, had sort of been taking one of those candidates to task on a regular basis, and I was very interested in what he had to say and all the information. So eventually he invited me to come in and be a participant. We beat that candidate up so badly that he forgot to file for the Republican convention, and immediately filed a lawsuit.
I was going to ask
the
you
original
about
guy disappeared. I never knew who he was, and I'm not asking who he is. I'm just thrilled at the job that he did, and I figured, well, you know, surrender really isn't an American value in my book, so I was going to stand up and take whatever rocks they wanted to throw at me, and that's continued. So that was in place, talking about local political issues and gaining a lot of folks who are, you know, coming to it to get an understanding of this race that had sort of been underneath the radar of the local media. And then about that time, or immediately before that, had been a big discussion about immigration in Manassas City, which resulted in Mexicans Without Borders flooding members into Manassas City Hall and waving the Mexican flag around in there, and got a lot of folks upset. So it sort of brought this up into the the public consciousness that there was a big issue in regards to residential overcrowding. There was this extremist group coming in that nobody really knew anything about. So it was a very early focus of some of, to the degree I do investigative reporting, if you can call it that, focusing on who these folks were, what they really wanted, what they really represented, and helping folks understand that, yes, you can stand up to this organization, which is essentially based in Woodbridge, and make your views known to the city council and all. And the issue of immigration has come up and becomes, such a high-profile issue that in some ways the blog has kind of become, 50% dealing with different facets of the immigration issue in Prince William County, Manassas Park. So
obviously from a certain point of view.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the thing people have to understand about blogs. They all have a point of view.
Now, I'm not here to promote the interests of Mexicans Without Borders by any means.
Annabelle, how do you respond to that? I mean, in terms of the new media. Well, let me ask Bruce one more question first. What kind of audience, Greg, I'm sorry, what kind of audience do you have? How big is your audience?
Within the last year, I've served about 2.7 million page requests. On a weekly basis, I'm getting about 6,200 different IPs that are coming in to request information. And usually, and this is based on my own servers, the page, I'm serving about 8,000 pages per day off of that site. Based on some analysis that was done by some Fairfax County bloggers, they say that in Prince William County, I'm the most read political blog, and probably the most read in Northern Virginia, even though there's other websites that have much more traffic than I do, but mine's very concentrated in a specific geographic area.
Yeah, because I've been looking at Ben Tribbett's, not Larry Sabato, looking at Lowell's Raising Cain. they got visitors from all over the place.
Right.
I mean, when you start looking at the IP addresses, they're not even all from Virginia, but they're from all over Virginia. And I sometimes wonder whether a lot of the folks, you know, I guess if I look at it with my BlackBerry, it's one IP address. If I look at it from my home, it's another. If I look at it from the office, it's another. That sometimes I've been told the page views and that it may not be quite as large as sometimes people suggest, but that nonetheless has definitely gotten an audience. So you started, you continued on with Black Velvet Bruce Lee, and obviously you elevated this immigration issue. And meanwhile, Annabelle comes on the scene with Eric, and they start shooting video.
Yeah, we started August 2007. And in fact, the first.
And how
thing
far
we
along
shot,
was this immigration issue at that point?
We were at the point that the initial draft had been revised, and the Board of County Supervisors had it on their agenda at the point that Annabelle and Eric showed up.
So August 2007.
Yeah, it was end of August, and our first shoot actually was Help Save Manassas meeting. And one of the reasons we decided to start the project was because we were reading a lot about it in the Washington Post, and actually quite surprised that it was happening. I wasn't really aware there was an illegal immigration problem in Northern Virginia. And so we kind of started the venture out of just curiosity, like, why is this happening? And Eric lives in Prince William County, and he was not aware at all that there was a problem. So we wanted to just, go and see what the meetings were like and meet Greg and other people who are involved in the issue. So, we definitely have perspectives about not just the immigration issue, but what's actually happening in Prince William County. And we wrote about some of that in the Washington Post Outlook section in December. And we're not that shy about expressing or sharing our perspectives, but we haven't allowed it to really get in the way of really trying to discover the truth about why it's happening and what the causes are. And so, as far as I know, we don't have anything false in there. But we have certain things that we have certain focuses, but we're genuinely trying to understand why it's happening and what are the real issues.
So Corey Stewart was advancing this resolution, and you were advancing this resolution, and you were helping him build a base, I think, of support for this. I mean, would that be going too far? We only have a couple of seconds.
Corey got blindsided by this. He had no idea this was coming up. This was the brainchild of Supervisor John Stirrup, and until the meeting actually happened, Corey had no idea that this was going on. The immigration issue was completely below his radar until it exploded.
He sure was able to run with it. Our guests today are Greg Latish and Annabelle Park, and we will be back in 2 minutes with another 45 minutes of discussion on this issue. Just want to remind you that we are accepting call-ins. Our number is 571-749-1166, and I encourage you to call.
How far would you go to help someone? Would you go to the end of your driveway? Would you cross a street? Would you cross an ocean? To a place 6,000 miles from home? How long would you go? Would you go for a week, a month, a year? Would you go for 2 years? Would you go if you could use your knowledge to teach someone? And in the process, maybe learn something yourself. Life is calling. How far will you go? Peace Corps.
James, don't forget your helmet.
Will do.
Not a helmet. Your bike helmet.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm James Thrash with the Washington Redskins. On the football field, a helmet is an important piece of equipment. I also wear another helmet that's just as important. A bike helmet. It's the most important piece of equipment you'll have the next time you're out on your bike. Wear yours and make sure your kids do too. Safety first with the Skins.
Monica and her friends want you to know that you should never get near a dog when it is eating, playing with a favorite toy, or sleeping. It's really important to make time for exercise and games and keep your dog's vaccines up to date. Never leave a dog in a small, confined space. This can make dogs aggressive like Monica. If you follow this advice, you and your dog can play safely and happily together.
Now back to the Inside Scoop Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back. My guests today are Greg Latique, who is the webmaster of Black Velvet Bruce Lee. It's a blog in Prince William County that has weighed in heavily on the immigration issue down there, and unless you've been living underneath a rock for the last year, you know about it. And Annabelle Park, who's a filmmaker and a new media activist who's been covering not only the immigration issue, but Mr. Latique a little bit as well. Just to put it in perspective, Prince William County passed a resolution, the Board of Supervisors, that in fact put a bunch of strictures, well, it gave authority to the police and others if in fact they arrested someone or picked somebody up and determined that they were illegal, they could throw them in jail, and they expected that ICE, Immigration Service, would pick them up in 72 hours, which apparently has not been happening, and it's no surprise to me. It's one more failure on the federal government on the immigration issue. So it's created a huge stir and controversy across Northern Virginia, not only in Prince William County, and it's coming to a head again this Tuesday night. I believe that date is the 29th, where Frank Principe, who is the newest member of the Prince William Board of Supervisors, a Democrat, has basically will be offering a resolution, or has, that will be acted on, or says he will offer a resolution that would in fact reverse a lot of this immigration policy that Prince William has passed and has been slowly enacting. I will also add that in Northern Virginia, Prince William is the only jurisdiction that has taken this kind of stance, and I know you've had some harsh words, as has Corey Stewart, the chairman of the board down there, for some of the other jurisdictions who have taken a different course. Would you suggest that I've described it probably once over lightly, but feel free to add anything you would?
Well, I would say that the resolution is considered one of the most aggressive, if not the most aggressive, type of legislation implemented by local government.
Nationally, you mean?
Yeah, but and in dealing with illegal immigration. And actually, it's not just anyone who's been arrested, but if they've even been suspected of breaking a law, even a minor traffic violation, and if there's probable cause that this person might be illegal, they can be asked for documentation. So it's very broad. It's not just at the level of serious crime or arrest, as it is. You know, who knows, that may change over time. So that's part of the controversy, is this determining probable cause and whether or not that's highly subjective, that will lead to racial profiling. And that's one of the reasons so many Latinos have actually left or fled Prince William County. You know, it's because they felt like it would lead to racial profiling. So even if they're illegal, they were afraid they would be targeted for this kind of harassment or potential mistreatment by the police.
How would you describe it? She describes it as harassment.
Potentially, I see.
Well, if you've broken the law and you're in this country unlawfully, you should have a reasonable fear of being held to account for the consequences of your unlawful behavior. What this resolution does is says that the police, during the course of their normal activities, if they have reasonable, probable cause to suspect you may be an illegal immigrant, they may ask you about your legal status, and if you're determined to be an illegal alien, in addition to whatever crime or period of detention you have to serve, you could be turned over to ICE. But if you're not going to be detained, the information is taken, written down, handed off to our federal government, which probably isn't going to do a whole lot with it anyway, but hopefully builds up some statistical information that would help ICE understand where they need to target to eventually do some workplace enforcement raids or enforcing federal anti-harboring laws to ensure that folks are not encouraging illegal aliens to unlawfully reside in our communities.
What about people who may be breaking other laws or folks, for example, folks who fail to pay taxes, local taxes or whatever? Why not do the same thing to them? They're breaking the laws too.
If they come into contact with law enforcement, and law enforcement has probable cause again to believe that they may be an illegal alien, they'll be asked. And that's very important because in Prince William County in the year 2007, there were 9 murders. 5 of those murder victims died at the hands of an illegal alien. Of those illegal alien murderers, most of them had previous interactions with law enforcement on a variety of things, some of them arrestable and some not. The 2 girls that were killed in Virginia Beach last spring by a drunken illegal alien had 5 previous interactions with the Virginia and Norfolk police departments for everything from driving without a license and DUI to speeding and everything. And the judge would give this drunken illegal alien, suspend his non-existent driver's license as an acceptable penalty to this guy that eventually went out and killed 2 young girls. The criminal illegal alien issue is a huge public safety problem, and you cannot wait for an illegal alien to go from breaking federal immigration laws and stealing identity and falsifying documents up through speeding and reckless driving and DUI until they get to murder. You can catch them before they become murderers.
Well, Greg, I mean, I want to ask you, do you think that undocumented residents are more likely to commit crime?
It doesn't matter whether they're more likely or less likely. The thing is they shouldn't be in our country in the first place to commit crimes. If we didn't have illegal aliens in this community, there'd be 9 people alive, or 5 people alive from 2007 that are now sitting in a grave.
Right, but you're holding those 5 people, right? You're holding an entire community responsible, I think, for those 5 people who committed
the Virginia
crimes.
State Police has told us that between 80 and 90% of all MS-13 gang members are illegal aliens.
Told you, told Corey Stewart.
Post.
Okay.
That 80 to 90%, and it's in a report that they did to the General Assembly, and that was reported in the Washington Post, that between 80 and 90% of all MS-13 gang members are illegal aliens. If we want to get rid of MS-13, which I think in Northern Virginia and in the Valley is a pretty important consideration, if we just got rid of illegal aliens, we would pretty much destroy the opportunity for MS-13, Serenos 13, Southside Locos, and the other gangs that operate in Northern Virginia.
But the thing is, I mean, the problem is that, yes, there are a lot of things we would like to get rid of. Like, I, for one, would like to get rid of pedophiles. Right?
Me too.
Right? But I wouldn't target, people who typically have, pedophiles that have a certain profile, like many of them are of a certain age, and they lack certain education. You can do kind of racial analysis of them as well. But I wouldn't go around targeting that group that fit that profile.
But I would target them on the basis of unlawful behavior. And I will discriminate day in and day out on the basis of, do you break the law or do you not break the law? Remember, these folks have broken the law. They have no legal right to be in our country. We have enough criminals and pedophiles and all the rest that we don't need to import more.
Well, we got some calls. We got some calls coming in. Let's not let them wait. Let's see. We got Mona from Los Angeles on the phone. That means somebody's watching us on the web.
Hi. I just wanted to comment very briefly that I think when we're having a dialogue about something this important, we need to be careful how we refer to people. People are not aliens. People are people. And that's one of the reasons we can't get past some of the issues, because of the negativity that folks like that your guests today are bringing to the forefront. How would you like it if I just said Republican jerk, for example?
I hear that all the time.
Well, you know, I don't want.
I'm pretty sure you do, and it might actually be an accurate way of describing you, but it doesn't get us very far into resolving any issues. And so I think it's really important for you and anybody else who really is trying to be effective in this area to show some respect to your fellow man, whether they are from the United States or not. And so that really is all I have to say.
I'm not defending Greg here, but I will note that it's a federal term. The federal government uses the term resident alien to deal with people.
Well, the federal government, for example, identified someone like me. I happen to be African American as less than fully human at one point.
Oh, I understand.
And we had to do something about that, so we need to do something about this.
Right. I mean, the term I really object to actually is anchor babies. I interviewed you when you used that term, and I know that it's a term that's used on CNN by Lou Dobbs and Bill O'Reilly as well. And I have a lot of trouble with that term because I feel like that, you know, it's dehumanizing and it's kind of hateful. Don't you think so? Anchor babies?
To answer the
a lot of hateful things
question,
on the blogs.
Yeah.
In order to figure out whether you should use the term illegal alien or not, the best thing to do is it's either Title 8 or Title 13 of the United States Code that defines these folks as a legal term as illegal aliens. There's resident aliens, non-resident aliens, there's legal aliens. That's a legal term, and if you're going to describe a legal condition, it's good to use the same terminology that the law actually uses. I don't tend to use the anchor baby term much. I don't particularly care for it because we are talking about American citizens, and I generally would agree that it's not very helpful. However, there's a lot of folks that need to understand that the purpose of chain migration and some of these other policies that we've had, and I think rightfully there's a concern about whether the 14th Amendment is being misinterpreted and abused in this manner. But the behavior of some of these illegal aliens will come across into the United States with the specific intent of having a child that will then anchor their family into the United States and in their belief make it more difficult to deport them is kind of it's an enraging type of behavior that I understand has a lot of folks very upset. But in order to start discussing that issue, what we need to do is, instead of talking anchor babies, start talking about what the 14th Amendment's purpose really was and how we're going to apply it and what it's going to mean for America going forward.
We are already breaking again. I barely got a word in edgewise. Hang on with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And we're talking about everything from not calling them illegal aliens to anchor babies. So we'll see you in 2 minutes.
Go to jail for a gun crime, and your family serves a sentence with you.
I'm Bob Costas, and I've been broadcasting sports for a long time. Much of what I do is ad-libbed, but still one of the most important aspects of my job is being able to write. Narrations, essays, commentaries. It's essential to express those thoughts and concepts clearly and concisely. Good writing is essential for almost any career. And with today's advanced technology, the National Commission on Writing reports that the need to write well has never been more important. Writing is everybody's business.
Sure, my neighbors Gene and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money.
Honey?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
Now back to the Inside Scoop, Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back to the show. As I've said several times, my guests are Greg Latique, who is the author of the Black Velvet Bruce Lee blog, which has been, and the president Help Save Manassas, both which are very much opposed to illegal immigration in Prince William County and quite frankly beyond, and filmmaker Annabelle Park, who has been documenting a lot of this on video. And we were talking, we've got a phone call I want to take pretty quickly, but we were talking about the issue, and I just want to ask a couple of quick questions. The federal government has failed us, but is it appropriate for individual municipalities to take up the cudgel on this stuff? And if it is appropriate, is it an effective use of tax dollars? Right now, the Prince William County Jail is exploding with illegal immigrants who've been arrested on minor charges. Much to the chagrin of county officials, ICE has let down the county, as they haven't handled this issue well to start with. They have not, in fact, protected our borders, and now they don't have their act together to pull these inmates out of the county jail. So as a result, the citizens of Prince William are paying for it. Secondly, it's my understanding that you've got a whole bunch of vacant properties in Prince William County right now. And house values in Prince William are dropping much more dramatically than they're dropping in Fairfax and or Arlington or these other locales. And thirdly, that there's actually been an economic impact relative to folks, you know, whether you are legal or illegal, you spend money where you live. And that less money is being spent. And finally, what I heard today, if in fact is true, is that the tax bills of Prince William County residents at this point look like they'll be going up about 5%. Now that is a big jump, 5%.
Well, that's a lot less than it had been, for the past 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we've ever had a tax bill, increase lower than that was last year. We're looking at potentially 5%, maybe a little bit more, but
just let me correct you. They say last year the resolution came in at the end of last year. So what you're trying to tell me is in a 2-month or month and a half, 2-3 month period that it just made this dramatic changes that changed the economics of the entire year?
Now, since about 2000, the Prince William County Board of Supervisors was raising our taxes 10% a year. A 5% tax raise is a heck of a break, given what we're normally.
It's still huge compared to the rest of the municipalities in Northern Virginia. Right. Do we have a call yet? Do we have Richard from Springfield on the line?
Yes. Wanted to bring in 2 threads of thought. There's a book that's been on the market called The Black Swan that's been very popular, and in it the author has some strong critiques for most news organizations because of the evidence that's not brought forward. And I think that you're doing some of that here on the evidence that's not brought forward on costs that are borne by people but are not reported in the government budget. The other issue is like increased crime costs, increased insurance when you have a loss, increased costs when you have to repair stolen identity. The other thing is that Mayor Giuliani and Chief Brock did a lot to clean up the crime statistics in New York with their broken window pane theory, where you destroyed or you got rid of the evidence of social disorder. It seems to me that what they're doing in Prince William County is that they're sending a strong message to the people that are creating the disorder that if you step out of line, then bad things are going to happen, and therefore crime statistics are down. I wanted to make those 2 points to frame the discussion, and then I'll get off.
Well, the only thing I could say is Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Kerik were quite a team in New York. Bernie Kerik cost Rudy Giuliani the Republican nomination. I was in New York during a lot of that period of time, and again, there were a lot of violations of civil rights and the like that took place during that process. The other thing is we can talk about the numbers that do not show up on government payrolls, but the reality of the matter is you're seeing declining tax revenues. Both, the count. It's unfortunate for the county, but they're getting a double hit because of the economy in general. What's happening with the economy? I mean, Fairfax home values are going down, but they're going down less. The closer you get to Washington, the less they go down. But the rate of foreclosure in Prince William at this point and abandoned homes is sky high compared to any other jurisdiction surrounding it. And you could presumably add some of this to it as well. And finally, the costs of crime, well, you're paying more for your jails at this point than expected. And number two, now I understand there's a multi-million-dollar request to put video cameras. The cops want the video cameras in these cruisers so they can protect themselves in the event that people cry constitutional issues when they go to court. So that's going to be another added burden on the taxpayers of Prince William. I heard Corey Stewart suggest that, well, they're actually saving money because they've already saved $6 million in the schools. I'd like to see those numbers and see how they can determine that so quickly, unless it's, what venue.
Well, those figures are being reported on a monthly basis by the public school system, which for the first time in our history is starting to see mid-year declines in enrollment, particularly of students that require English as a second language support, which is probably the most expensive burden in the schools. But before we go down there, there's a couple of things I wouldn't mind correcting. One is that the Adult Detention Center has had ICE come in. They're committing to do twice weekly removals at this point.
They're supposed to do 72 hours when you cut the deal, though, right?
They had committed to doing 72 hours. It sometimes had gone to the point where it was 3 weeks. Congressman Frank Wolf got involved. We got a whole bunch of other people involved, and ICE got essentially embarrassed into fulfilling their obligations. So now that backlog is tremendously reduced. But on top of that, the federal government, under the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, reimburses localities the costs of maintaining those inmates between the time that they've completed their sentences, waiting for the federal government to pick them up. So while there is a burden, it is not the full level of burden.
But it's costing $200,000 a month, isn't it, to transfer?
It had been costing that to transfer inmates to other facilities.
And Prince William was picking up those costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ICE did come in and testify that they had overcommitted themselves, right? And so it might be that there's been good response after Frank Wolf's request. We don't know how long, if they can sustain that, because the infrastructure is not there at ICE, and they admit to overcommitting. And I think my biggest concern about the resolution is that at the local government level, the infrastructure is actually not there. You have to build that infrastructure.
The only way the federal government is going to allocate the resources to ICE to do the job that they committed that they would do to us and haven't been doing is to point out on a continual basis of how much they're falling down. The more public that is, the more difficult it is for them to defend their current budget levels unless they get their act cleaned up. So if they want more money from Congress, they got to prove that they're good custodians of the money they already have.
Right,
well, they've proved to us over the years that they're not.
They're not reliable partners.
And they've been unable to protect. The real way to solve the immigration issue is to, number one, seal the borders.
That would help a lot.
A sovereign nation should have sealed borders. But number two, you can bump up the legal immigration. But until they do that, anything that's done, whether it's what Prince William's doing, et cetera, anything that's done is only a Band-Aid approach. And it's also an approach that in my mind, certainly lacks any form of compassion and often borders on racism.
Well, the compassion has to be there for the legal residents who are seeing their communities inundated with illegal aliens. Having 5 or 6 of these houses overcrowded with 12, 30 people crammed into them on your block, where's the compassion for that resident? Where's the compassion for the folks that the Manassas City resident that got murdered by a bunch of MS-13 gang members in November 2006? The compassion has to be primarily to the folks that are suffering the burdens of the failure of the federal government to live up to its obligations.
Yeah, can I just respond?
Go ahead, Anna.
And I just want to say, in case you're wondering, I do have compassion for those residents.
That must be why you cover them so extensively.
And I do have compassion for the complaints that I've heard from people from Help Save Manassas and through you and Corey. But I don't think that the solutions that you're reaching for fit the problems. And it seems like there was plenty of room to look at alternative solutions other than to take this very aggressive, very dramatic action. And in such a rush as well.
No, where are the alternatives? We've debated this starting in June 26th and implemented the plan on March 3rd of the following year. In all of that time period, no one else has come up with an alternative plan to ensure that illegal aliens don't unlawfully reside in our community.
There hasn't been much time. There wasn't time, space created to focus on really looking at alternative solutions. Because the resolution was introduced in July and passed in July. And
no,
since
the resolution was introduced in June, initially passed in July, and then the budgeting for it was handled in October.
Right, but what I'm saying is that there wasn't a proper process in place for people to have serious input, for there to be time to research and plan the resolution, because it's a very dramatic, experimental resolution. Everyone can admit that this hasn't really been done in other places. And Prince William, in a sense, has become a lab for testing this thing. And at a time when there is a budget deficit, at a time when people are very divided, and a lot of people, as you know, they are misinformed about what the issues are and what the facts are. And frankly, there aren't that many facts. So I just think that it might have been better if there had been a process where people had time to research and discuss.
Let's take one break and let's take this call from Lupe before we lose the.
Right. I appreciate what you're saying. I am fully blood Mexican from Mexico City, Paso, Texas, have been in the United States as an illegal immigrant. There's a process in place to become a USA citizen. You have to follow the law. And I believe the lady in the middle, I forgot her name. You're wrong. The process has always been established there. It has always. The problem has been, one, we have made so many accommodations to provide for what we call underprivileged. No, there's no, when you come to the United States, even from the French and Jewish people, we earn a living. I come from Cesar Chavez, and I hope you know who Cesar Chavez is. We pick up tomatoes and grapes. We were totally fumigated, but we never, ever asked for a penny on the government. I believe we need to know who is in the United States. So Greg is right. It has nothing to do with race. Unfortunately, because of how we politically define races, we are claimed that we are against Mexicans. I hate it because I'm Hispanic. Asian people do not have to worry about it. Indian people do not have to worry about it. The people that are paying for it.
I think we're having a problem.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to have to take a break, but we'll be back in 2 minutes. So please bear with us and stay with us, and we will see you in 2.
One day, I forgot to throw away my trash after lunch, but then I saw it later when I was playing in the woods. The next week, I went boating with my grandpa, and there it was. I tried to go swimming, but I couldn't because of my trash. And when I went fishing, well, you can guess what I caught that day. So now I always throw away my trash in the garbage can, where it belongs.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty, but one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
Every year, 250,000 Americans are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease.
My fellow scientists and I are working on treatments and a cure for this deadly disease.
Millions of lives are at stake. Alzheimer's disease affects 1 in 3 families.
We're committed to uncovering the mystery of Alzheimer's.
And we're not going to quit until the job is done.
To find out more about Alzheimer's disease, call 1-800-437-2423.
Only through research will a cure be found.
James, don't forget your helmet.
Will do.
Not a helmet. Your bike helmet.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm James Thrash with the Washington Redskins. On the football field, a helmet is an important piece of equipment. I also wear another helmet that's just as important. A bike helmet. It's the most important piece of equipment you'll have the next time you're out on your bike. Wear yours and make sure your kids do too. Safety first with the Skins.
Now back to the Inside Scoop, Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back. We've had a lively discussion on immigration and what Prince William County has done over the past year on this issue. Greg Latique, who has been very much in the middle of the battle to throw them out, basically, and Annabelle Park, who's been documenting this issue. Everything when we talk about the cost is a slippery slope here. And I will give you, as I said, that the economy is part of it. But it just strikes me that the cost far exceeds what will ultimately be the benefit, particularly where, and it's not me saying this, again, it's the Washington Post. I was surprised to hear a blogger quoting the Washington Post, but because usually they won't. But the Washington Post has made it pretty clear that there are a lot of businesses owned by legal immigrants, Hispanics, who have no business at the moment. I mean, their clientele has dried up. And I understand how it works, that all of a sudden, so that tax revenue is no longer going to the county from these businesses, and one after another, ultimately these businesses are going to go out of business themselves. So you're not only going to have vacant homes, you're going to end up having vacant storefronts where some of these businesses existed. How long can, and now you got to throw in, how many millions of dollars are these video cameras?
3 million.
So you got to throw in another 4 million. It's going to be more than they say it is. It always is. ICE is going to fall down again. I will predict that right now, that they're not going to keep it up. I mean, I worked on the Hill for years, and you know, we were dealing with immigration in the late 70s and early 80s, and nothing was done. So it hasn't gotten any better. But there is the fear that this will ultimately cost the citizens of Prince William County far more than expected. I mean, we had one caller who left a message and said that it's expected to cost $20 per citizen. That means per kid, per mother, per father, et cetera. I don't know if that's an accurate number or not. But is ultimately the cost worth the effort, and will it truly be successful? And if it is successful, is that the kind of reputation that Prince William County wants to have to the nation?
Prince William County, prior to this, sort of was gaining the reputation of being Little Mexico. Folks didn't want to come to Prince William County or Manassas Park because it was undergoing some of the same transformations that certain areas in Montgomery County, Maryland had. You know, people move to a place, do business there, raise families there because they like the schools, because the neighborhoods are nice and safe and are quality, and that they like the environment there. But when you go down Route 234 and almost all the signage is in Spanish, and you can't do business in some stores like Walmart or McDonald's without being able to speak Spanish as a second language, folks were avoiding Prince William County. Now, we saw a dramatic change happen, one, because of the economic changes, but also because of the rule of law resolution that's restoring the quality of these neighborhoods back into what folks would want to buy it as. So we're gonna have a chance to see, though, because you have a take and I have a take, and they're on opposite sides. But since our illegal aliens from Prince William County have all decided to relocate to Fairfax, which doesn't want to roll up the welcome mat at all for them, you can educate them, you can provide them with public services here, and we'll see how that goes.
Right. So, Greg, I mean, since this program is about netroots,
just one thing, the Supreme Court requires that every child be educated, whether they are a citizen, whether they are here legally, whether they are here illegally, because it does this country no good to have people, whomever they are, who are not educated. And certain and hospitals that have public charters are required to deal with everyone who comes through the door for the same reason, because if somebody has tuberculosis, particularly some of the new strains, or some other diseases that are highly contagious, the last thing you want to do is start a pandemic. So if you deny such services to anyone who is residing in our country, you're jeopardizing the health and safety of all the citizens.
And no one's advocating restricting those services.
Well, you were just talking about where we have to educate them and the like. Well, the law of the land is that we educate them. Right. Educate anyone.
But you don't have to have, as Jerry Connolly puts it, the welcome mat out. To have them come here for jobs, for public benefits that can be restricted. So, like in Montgomery County, Maryland, where they can actually get driver's licenses, and some jurisdictions vote in municipal elections.
Fairfax County is the wealthiest jurisdiction in Northern Virginia. It's the wealthiest jurisdiction in the nation for a county. Montgomery County's in the top 5. Both of them have had a much more compassionate policy than
diverse.
you, or they've been diverse for 30 years. Both of them have had, there are many people in this community now who may have been the sons and daughters of folks who were here illegally, who now, in fact, are these people are U.S. citizens, these kids. They've gone to college. They are productive members of our society. They may not be the same color as you or the same color as me or Annabelle, but just as much as you or me, they are now Americans.
Can I just say, there's so much to discuss about this policy, and the implications of the policy and the rationale for it. There's so much to debate about immigration issue in general, But I don't think we're going to really get to the bottom of it, and we're not going to decide after this program the wisdom behind the resolution.
The proof will be in the pudding a year or two from now when we look back. We do have one more call. Let me just take this call from Leonard before my directors throw rocks at me.
But I do have a point I want to make.
Leonard?
Yes, sir.
What can we do for you?
I'm reading the Outlook and the Washington Post. Somebody's got to do the job, but just what is it? Again, this is the USA political people doing it. What is happening in the state of Virginia? Where is the governor? Do we have legislatures in this state of Virginia? I've been here since 1965. I'm originally from New Jersey. We had control by the governor. Everything was controlled by the governor. They had counties. But now, Greg, I think his name is, he with some organization, I don't know what kind of organization it is, but Black Velvet something, I don't know. But no, we have so much documentation. Cameras are good, but the enforcement of the rules of the use of those cameras should be done. I've been with the Department of Army for a number of years. We had a staff of people that would analyze the database. Of course, Supreme Court has got one role. The government has another role. We have legislators at every level of this government in the United States of America. In the governor's office, we have people that are experienced. Now, we Americans, I'm 81 years old, so I'm pretty up in age. But as time goes on, I'm worried about my son, my grandson, Prince William County. I live in Northern Virginia, away from him. But we must remember, Northern Virginia is no different than Hampton Roads. But also, when you get back to the schools, they're taking a lot of money away from the values of our sustainability. We've saved for years and years, only to find our taxes going up. But the fear of losing our home because we can't meet the bills, it's a problem for the state government.
Leonard, thank you very much. I'm sorry we can't keep up the dialogue, but we're going to run out of time in a minute. Thank you for calling. I hope I am as sharp as you are at the ripe old age of 81. The only thing I want to say, again, though, is, and I think Greg will agree with me, what the Prince William Police and Prince William government are enforcing at this point is federal law. And they're now federal agents is what they are, those police officers. They've been deputized in order to be able to do that. They must have some kind of authority to be holding these people if in fact they were not arrested on anything but probable cause determined they were illegal. They have to have some kind of authority to be holding these people, and there's a 287G, I think it is,
that's
authority, which is federal deputization.
Can I just make
Go ahead,
point?
Annabelle. We got a minute and 40 seconds yet, so go for it.
Okay, so so my point is there's a lot to discuss and debate, and a lot of facts to go over, and a lot of facts to gather, right? And I do feel like this resolution was rushed, probably in the heat of the election, and it seemed like politically the stakes were high for the supervisors to vote in favor of it in July and in October when they decided to fund part of that.
The citizens demanded it, and politicians responded. That's the way it's supposed to work.
No, it doesn't always have to work that way, because sometimes citizens are misinformed.
So we're all stupid, okay.
No, I didn't say stupid, but these are issues that require a lot of research, and we don't have enough facts. There's a lot of perception and fear, but there weren't enough facts to really base this resolution.
Because
there needed to be time and
the government deliberately tries not to collect those facts.
Then you agree there aren't enough facts, that people were acting on their fear and perception and frustration.
People were acting on the best information they had.
But there was a lot of frustration.
And personal experience.
Yeah, but I don't think that the resolution really reflects the majority of the people, because they didn't really participate in the discussion.
As you can see, as we run out of time, as you can see, the debate on this show is no different than the debate taking place in Prince William County and other places around the country. There's a lot of stuff, so-called facts, etc. Some are true, some are not. But the reality of the matter is this debate's going to be going on for a long time, and we'll just have to see what happens in Prince William. Thank you.